Hello.
Yeah, I'll give you an intro and then we can start.
Sure, Aziz.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for changes on the webinar. So we have an announcement for the participants. We will be using the new platform for hosting the webinars tomorrow onwards. So participants should initiate new registration for the upcoming webinars for them to attend. So the registration will be links will be hosted on the new on the IDC webpage. So we sincerely regret for the inconvenience caused because this is part of the restrictions imposed by the government for using the Zoom platform. So coming back to the webinar, today is the 13th day of Inspire to Innovate webinar series where we have Mr. Mihir Gupta as a speaker. Today the speaker will be discussing the topic innovations in the SME finance sector. So, and he's here to inspire you to innovate with this knowledge and experience. A few words about Mihir. Mihir heads the lending business at Open, which is India's first neo-banking platform. Prior to Open, Mihir was working with Oyo and heading their revenue department in Malaysia. So he started his career as an operation consultant with McKinsey, working in India and Southeast Asia category. Southeast Asia geography. So Mihir is a mechanical engineer by education, having completed his dual degree from IIT Bombay in 2015. So today's session is co-hosted by NIT Calicut. A special thanks to the IDC team and its nodal officer, Ms. Anju Annie George. So Inspire to Innovate is conceived to engage the student community during this lockdown period. Any interested individual can attend the session. Every day will be a 40-minute knowledge-packed interactive session where key speakers, including startup founders, academicians, industry leaders, will share their knowledge and experience. As usual, the webinar schedule today will be a 40-minute session. You can type your question into the Q&A box on the left side of the screen. I hope it's on the left side for the audience as well. I would request each of you to take this an opportunity to connect with him and make the most out of the session. So I would like to formally invite Mihir to take over the session. Mihir, please. You can start.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for the introduction. A pleasure to be here. Just a quick check. Will I be able to see the questions in the chat somehow, or
you can view the questions on the Q&A on the left side.
Okay, so I see the list. Okay, there is a Q&A section. Correct.
Yeah, Q&A. So if you want to broadcast a message, you can click the broadcast message button on the bottom, and your message will be broadcasted to every participant.
Got it. Sure. Cool. So let's get started then. So thanks a lot everyone for joining today. It's really motivating to see that even during these difficult times, we are engaging in such discussions and such a large participation. It being a Sunday and also all the COVID-19 crisis going on. Great to see that we are engaging in these constructive discussions and are positive about the future. So pleasure to be here. We'll just get started. So the topic for today is discussing all the innovations that are happening in the SME finance sector. I'll just walk you through the agenda that we have for the webinar. So since I've been given the understanding that the majority of the participants in today's webinar are students, what we'll do is maybe probably I'll walk you through a bit of my journey so far, right? How my life as a student had been when I was back in college, my experience working with different startups, trying a few startups of my own, etc. We'll walk through that journey so that maybe a few of you can get can relate to that and maybe take some insights that might be helpful. Then we will just go deep dive into the topic. We'll start with the basics of what MSMEs are, what is the role that they play in the economy. Then we'll try to understand the current credit gap situation that these businesses face and what are the challenges in this particular domain, and also try to understand what are the different reasons that are causing this credit gap, right? And lastly, we will look at what are the different innovations that are happening through the fintechs, through the government, or through other agencies that are changing the way this industry operates, right? And lastly, we'll have a Q&A section where all your doubts, whatever you have, we can address them. Right? So I don't have a time check on my side, but what I'll do is I'll try to keep the initial part of discussion to be around 20-25 minutes, and then we will do a detailed Q&A. So since my screen is covered with the PPT right now, in case there is a breakage in the connection or etc., I would request the admins to give me a ping separately so that I can. Yeah. Okay. So getting started, right? So on my background, so I come from Bhopal. That's my hometown back in Madhya Pradesh. I was born and brought up there. Did my entire schooling there, and after my schooling, I moved to Mumbai, to do my engineering from IIT Bombay. Spent around 5 years as a mechanical engineering student. I think the reason I chose mechanical engineering at that point was that wanted to take a stream that is more intuitive to understand, more tangible in the sense of the kind of output that you can get out of it. I believe a lot of mechanical engineers who are there on the call today can relate to that thought process as well. Right? So when in college, there were lots of activities happening in terms of sports, cultural activities, and even tech activities for that matter. So from my first year onwards, I got involved in certain technical activities around robotics, right? So at that point, there used to be a competition called Robocon. I think that still happens as of today as well. It's like a ground robotics competition where you make a set of 2 to 3 robots, you build them over a period of many months, and then at the end of the year, you take your robots to the competition, right? So that's how I started engaging in different activities, different team activities at a student level. And we did that for 1 year, and then at that point, IIT Bombay had been participating in these activities, in this particular competition for many years. So we decided that why not try something new, something completely unexplored so far, and try something that is that has a very unique set of challenges. So we, as a group of students, we tried to figure out what all different competitions are happening globally, and one of the competition that really struck us was an underwater robotics competition, right? Where you make certain submarines and you take it to a competition in the US, which is organized by the US Navy, and universities across the globe come there and participate. So we decided, let's take this really ambitious project on and figure out how to go about it. Right? So the reason I'm telling you this story is that as students, you really get this unique opportunity of engaging in a number of activities which have really limited risk associated. Right? Such student activities give you an opportunity to experience a startup without having to deal with all the failures associated with it. So the idea is that make sure that you get involved in these activities, and that really helps you in the long term from an entrepreneurial journey. Right? So to give you a sense, I'll just show you the current website of that particular project that we started back in 2011. So if you can see my screen, this is the website of AUV IITB. So it stands for Autonomous Underwater Vehicles IIT Bombay. And we created these submarines, which are called the Matsya series of submarines, right? So it started back in 2011. There is still a team that runs as of now. Today, every year, around 30 to 40 students engage in this activity, take the submarine to US every year, participate in the competition, and learn a lot in the process. Right? So just to give you a glimpse, this is the arena, the US Navy facility where this competition happens every year. And these are the kind of submarines that we built as part of this, right? So we started with this very basic machine, graduated to this kind of a machine, and today the vehicle looks something as intense as the one on the center. Right? So it ran as a complete, I would say, mini startup in itself back in college, where you work, you first of all do a hiring activity, you find the right team for your for the project. Then you try to secure funds for that project, right? So you do not get the funds right away from the college, just like that. You have to look for a lot of sponsorship, reach out to different corporates, and then try to figure out how do you run this entire activity. So, for example, these are the kind of sponsors that we had to generate. We even reached out to the Ministry of Defense, and got some funding from there for the sensors that we use. And it was a completely intense activity that we so at least for me in my student journey, this consumed 4 years of my student journey and took away at least 30 to 40% of my time back at college, right? We started from a basement lab. I used to spend our nights there, uh, often miss classes just to do well in this activity. But try doing things like this, right? And an implication of that is a lot of startups come out of such activities. For example, all my team members from this activity ended up starting this startup called Emotics, which came up with India's first educational robot for kids, and they are right now making these educational robots, selling them globally to the world right now. Right? Apart from this activity as well, there were a number of different things that were happening back at college. Just in terms of the technical projects, there was a racing team, there was a ground vehicle team, there was a solar house project, there was a satellite project, a Mars rover project. And if I look at the team members of all of these different activities, almost from every team, one or the other startup came out. And that is a very unique insight that you should look at, that engage in these activities, you'll make friends that you'll bond for life. These are the people that you'll reach out to again and again when you're trying to start up something new, and this will help you in the long term. So this was the first part of the student journey. I can take questions on this later as well in Q&As if you have something around this. But after college, I was fortunate enough to get into McKinsey as an operational consultant. What I learned there was, although I was specifically looking at supply chain management, looking at logistics, transportation, etc. But what I got to learn there was how businesses work, right? How traditional companies operate. I got exposure to a lot of different industries in terms of, let us say, advanced electronics manufacturing, to as basic an industry as cement, to automobile industry, or logistics industries, etc., etc. Right? So lots of exposure, lots of geographical exposure in the kind of travel you get to do, the kind of people you get to meet. So that helps in bringing a good foundation before you jump into, let us say, entrepreneurship of your own or any other thing. Right? So if some of you end up taking a job after college, I would just suggest that whichever choice you are making, try to think from an angle that what kind of learning will the job give you, right? Because these initial few years right after college is when the peak learning happens. So make that choice very wisely. The third thing is, after consulting, I decided that I want to explore the startup world more, work for startups or do a startup of my own. So after McKinsey, I decided to join Oyo. So I was working for them in Malaysia. So Malaysia was one of the first countries that Oyo launched right after India. And there I was looking after setting up the entire revenue function. So there again, got the experience about learning to set up an entire business or a business department from scratch, building a team of 10 plus people, working in a new geography, creating processes in an atmosphere that is really dynamic. Right? So what you learn while you work with startups, the first thing that you learn is that things are really, really dynamic. Everything is changing by the hour, right? So creating some kind of a structure in that entire madness is the key to kind of working through it. Right? So I worked with Oyo for some while. Then I decided to come back to India because I wanted to be closer to the startup ecosystem. So although Oyo is a startup in itself, but it's more or less a very mature startup as of now, right? I wanted to be working with more early stage startups or doing something of my own. So I came back to Bangalore, worked on a startup idea with my friends for a few months, but things did not kick off because of multiple reasons. One of them being the core idea that we were operating with was not very scalable. But what I decided then was that if I cannot do a startup right now, let's just work for a relatively early stage startup. And that's how I came in touch with the founders of Open Financial Technologies, which was which was the first neobank in India. And I found out that they are doing something really interesting and got the chance to build their lending business from scratch. And that's how I ended up in the current role. And that's why we are taking this session right now on the innovations in SME finance. Right. So that's more or less of my journey. In terms of entrepreneurship, for me, it's more or less like a continuous thing where, although I haven't been able to dedicatedly do a startup of my own, it's an evolving thing where I'm learning something new every day while working with these founders, these startups, etc., etc. And probably the time will come that when I'm also able to take that plunge myself. Right? So this is the journey so far. Let me just get into the core topic that we have around SME finance, right? So starting with the very basics of what MSME stands for. So MSME is basically micro, small, and medium enterprises. Micro meaning the really small businesses that you see, your typical kirana shop kind of a business or a grocery shop kind of a business. Small ones being businesses that have an investment in the scale of, let us say, 25 lakh to 5 crore in manufacturing, while 10 lakh to 2 crores in services, while medium size being the slightly larger businesses, but still not the large corporates, right? So when we talk, when I say MSMEs or SME in this particular webinar, I'm talking about the same context, right? So I might use the term SME, but what I mean is the entire MSME spectrum. So if you look at it, then there are roughly more than 6 crore MSMEs in India. Out of them, the major chunk is the micro enterprises, which are typically your businesses with less than 25 lakh investment if you talk about manufacturing sense, or in services less than 10 lakh investment, right? While then there are around 30 lakh small enterprises and a few thousand medium enterprises. Right? So although the terms that we use are micro, small, and medium, but if you look at it, the impact that these businesses have on the economy is huge, right? And this impact is often underlooked when we talk about things like GDP or growth of economy, etc., etc. We typically tend to think in terms of, let us say, the Tatas, the Reliance, the Birla, Bajaj, etc. But these are the businesses that are doing the heavy lifting for the economy, right? So just some metrics around it. The GDP contribution of MSMEs is roughly around 31%. If you talk about exports, their share is as high as 45%, while the manufacturing output is around roughly again 45% of the overall economy, right? While the estimate is that these businesses employ around 13 crore individuals, while although my sense is that the number could be much higher. Right? So what this slide overall tells you is the important role that these businesses play in the economy, right? But the next topic that we are going to discuss on is the challenges that these businesses are facing. So what we see is that right now, these businesses face a huge liquidity crunch. There is a big credit gap. The term that is used in the industry is the credit gap, that these businesses have a demand for liquidity, for capital, while the formal sector is not able to cater to that. Right? In terms of numbers, if we look at, then as of 2018, there was roughly a 69 trillion INR demand of credit from these businesses. Right? By credit, I mean the lending demand or the capital demand. Right? So 69 trillion INR is nothing but equivalent to 69 lakh crore rupees. Right? That is the amount of credit need by these businesses. But if we look at it, then only around 11 trillion is what the formal sources are able to address. Right? What we mean by formal sources here is either banks, private, government, or even foreign banks for that matter, the cooperative banks or the rural banks all taken together. We have NBFCs, which are non-banking financial companies, which are typically your companies like Tata Capital or Bajaj Finserv, which are not banks as such, but are offering certain financial services. And then you have other government institutions or government schemes that help these businesses get access to this credit, right? But only around 16%, which is this 11 trillion, is coming from these sources. What happens to the rest of the 58 trillion is either it does not get met, the need does not never gets met, they never get access to that credit, or they have to resort to taking this credit from the informal sources, right? The informal sources can be your friends, your family, your employer, or even or in majority sense the money lenders, the offline money lenders that you see on the streets, or working offline, right? And these getting capital from these sources comes with their own challenges, right? The interest rate can be very high. The policies can be really predatory. So that is why there is a big need right now, pressing need to solve for this issue. Because if we are not able to solve this credit crunch, then we will not be able to grow at the right pace that we want to grow as an economy. Because if your businesses don't have cash at hand, one is that they cannot grow their business, they cannot grow it in scale and volumes, and two is that even at the current scale, they do not have cash to make their transactions, right? Because businesses operate on a credit model, where you make a certain delivery or you provide a certain service and you get paid for it later, depending upon your payment terms. So there is always this need of certain working capital that is missing for these businesses, and they are not able to get it. If we deep dive on what are the reasons that are leading to this kind of a gap, then there are primarily four issues that stand out. The first one is an accessibility issue. So although the public sector banks have, or the rural banks and cooperative banks have done really good in reaching out to the rural masses and in providing branch accessibility, the banking penetration still varies a lot across the country. Right? So especially in low income states or the northeastern states, the penetration of the branches is really low. And even if you have a branch in a particular locality, you cannot be sure whether the branch is able to cater to the entire segment of population or businesses out there. So that is the first issue that the formal sector faces. The second issue is the high transaction costs. So when you look at a traditional bank giving out a loan, right, that would involve them doing certain marketing campaigns, certain reach outs that they do to the population, or even let us say a person walks into a branch and applies for a loan. First is that there is this entire huge fixed cost associated with setting up a branch, putting the resources around it, and just running it, even if you are not doing any transaction. And the second is the variable cost. So the entire documentation, processing, underwriting, appraisal of a typical loan process in a traditional sense is so manual that banks and traditional institutions end up spending a lot on each application. And what that implies is that you don't have unit economics to scale in that manner, and you're not able to do small ticket loans. And small ticket loans like 50,000, 1 lakh rupees is the need for this particular segment. The third is the way they do underwriting. Right? When we say underwriting, what we mean is the process of assessing whether a particular loan amount or a credit facility can be given to an individual or a business. So the way it has been, this particular function has been very slow to evolve. Right? If you talk particularly about business loans, then it is designed to handle very traditional, established kind of businesses that have proper finances, proper financials, proper P&L, proper documentation, and that typically a small size business doesn't have. Right? Imagine a small retail shop. They wouldn't have the balance sheet for them to show to a bank, right? So the product, the way these businesses are assessed, it hasn't evolved much, right? So that's the third challenge. The fourth challenge is the products themselves, right? So these businesses, they require a variety of products when it comes to lending itself, right? They might require lump sum amount to, let us say, open another shop, right? They might require an upfront 10-15 lakh rupees loan from a bank. While this is one kind of a credit facility they need, they also have very unique working capital needs. For example, something as simple as a line of credit, right? Because when you as a business, you procure your goods from somewhere and you pay upfront. while you are able to sell them after a certain period of time, and you get paid later. So there is this gap period, which is your entire cash cycle. And to fund that, you need access to very flexible kind of credit, where you might want to borrow certain money for, let us say, a certain amount of money, 20,000 rupees for 10 days, and you're expecting a payment after 10 days, you want to pay it back. So these kind of very unique products that are suited for this kind of a business segment are missing in the traditional offerings. Also, all the traditional offerings typically for business loans were earlier built on a collateral based model, that if you want a loan, you put up a upfront collateral with the bank, and the bank uses that as a security and gives you a certain amount of money, right? So if you have a shop and you want to open and you want, let us say, 5 lakh rupees to do certain renovation in your particular shop, you would need to give your shop as a security, right? But imagine a business that doesn't have any collateral. They are using a rented space, or they have already given out this particular space as collateral to some other bank for some other loan, right? So these kind of collateralized products are something that are able to cater to a very small demand from the entire spectrum of demand that is out there. Now that we understand what are the different challenges and how big the problem size is, let us move on to some of the solutions that are coming up in this entire SME lending space because of all the innovation that is happening. So what we need to understand before we talk about the different innovations is that lending in itself is a very ancient activity or a very ancient industry. So it goes back as long as the civilization has been there. So there are evidences that in Mesopotamia, as back as 2000 BC, people were engaging in lending activity, collateral based lending, that you give a certain collateral or a resource to someone and you get certain credit out of them, right? So this is a very old industry, and naturally, being an old industry, there is a lot of inertia that is associated with it. So things take a lot of time to change when it comes to banking, finance, and lending. However, in the very recent past, because of all the technology and different innovations happening, things have been changing at a very rapid pace. So I'll take a few examples of how things are changing the entire lending landscape, and specifically for businesses. The first one is digital user journeys. Right? The recent smartphone penetration, as well as the internet 4G penetration, has enabled financial institutions to reach out to customers in a purely digital manner. There are NBFCs and institutions present as of day that can give out a loan to you in a matter of hours without ever visiting you physically, or they might give out a loan to a small business without ever going to the shop to verify whether it exists or not. So there are these digital journeys that internet and smartphone penetration has enabled. And because of this, you do not need to now have a physical presence or a physical branch everywhere you want to operate. That brings down your cost, that brings down your time to serve, that also increases the number of people you can reach out to, or number of customers you can reach out to. And the criticality of this, the entire industry has realized very recently in the COVID-19 epidemic as well, or pandemic as well, because right now, if you see across the landscape, the lending activities are on a virtual standstill, especially when it comes to NBFCs and financial institutions. And the reason it is so is twofold. One is that it's very difficult for them to predict right now how the medium term or the long term impact of the entire pandemic is going to be. So they are being a bit risk averse. But also, it's the second reason is that even if they wanted to give out these loans, they cannot give out in the majority sense, because the way the processes are built is that someone needs to go there, do the KYC, do the verification, and then sign the documents and then give out the loan. And in a lockdown situation, you cannot do that. So everyone has realized the importance of these digital journeys, and we'll see a very rapid movement to these kind of setups in the near future. The second kind of innovation is the creation of data itself. So we are seeing new data being created every single day, every single hour, that can be used for the purpose of lending. So like we discussed, that a small business does not have a lot of documents or financials to show to a bank or a lending institution. The way it is getting solved is that all the different payment solutions that have come in, the digital payment solutions, for example, QR codes or point of sale where you can swipe a card, or a payment gateway for online transactions. With each transaction that happens, you add a new data point against that business. You get additional evidence that this business is healthy, it is doing some transactions, there is some trend to how they operate. And this data is being actively used by financial institutions to lend to these businesses. So there is a whole lot of data creation that is happening, and that is leading to changes. Moving on, the third thing that is changing is new kind of underwriting models. Right? So people are businesses or banks are no longer giving out loans just on the basis of your balance sheets. Fintechs, NBFCs, new age banks, they are using all kinds of alternate data to assess the businesses. This data can be their banking transactions. It can be how frequently or how diligently you pay your mobile bill. It can be the online behavior that you do on social media websites. It can be a psychometric analysis of how you're filling the loan application form, asking you some questions and trying to get a personality trend out of it, etc. So all these models, what they're enabling is that even though you might not have a lot of data points in the traditional sense, you can look at all these proxies and assess whether you can give out a loan to a particular business. The third one is smart kind of product designs, right? So a lot of new designs are coming in the market. This can be a very flexible line of credit where you get a limit, let us say, of 5 lakh rupees. If you have a need of 1 lakh rupees on a particular day, you withdraw for 1 lakh rupees, you pay it back in 5 days, and you give only a 5 days interest. Loan product as flexible as that. Or a product that is very frequently being used by the retailers these days is pay back every day, or a daily repayment kind of product, where you take a 10,000 rupees loan for a particular month and you pay daily. This is all the collections that you make on that day. Or a supply chain financing product, this is all the invoices that are generated for your business, you get a certain financing against those invoices. So these are all the new age product designs that are coming in that can help serve these businesses in a much better way, in a much relevant way as well. The next innovation is happening on the regulatory side or the government side, where the changes that the government or RBI are bringing in that are enabling a lot of these things to happen. For example, Aadhaar-based verification or Aadhaar-based KYC, where through the Aadhaar digital stack, banks are able to do KYC, or NBFCs are able to do KYC in a remote manner and eliminate the need to go and visit a person. It can be something like an NBFC account aggregator, where RBI has come up with this framework where certain entities called account aggregators can get the customer's consent and collect data from different data sources, like your banking transaction, your payment transactions, your telecom history, even your GST filing, aggregate it all together and then make it available for the lenders to pitch you certain products. There is a TREDS platform where the government has mandated different corporates to upload and confirm the invoices against all their small suppliers, so that the suppliers, when, let us say, a small supplier, when they are supplying a certain good to a business, a company like Tata, and they're expecting a payment after 3 months, a lender can look at that particular invoice and pay the supplier in advance, so that he's able to do further business in the course of immediate days, while later the money from the corporate can come directly to the lender itself. It is in the form of acts. Innovation is coming in the form of different government acts around SARFAESI or IBC acts, where the government has made it easier for these financial institutions to recover their money in case a delinquency happens, or in case the borrower does not pay back. So all these changes are also bringing together a lot of innovation in the way the different products can be created, by different institutions. And lastly, the entire concept of neo-banking that has come in, where where companies which are not holding banking licenses or are not a physical bank in a traditional sense, but are able to offer different banking and financial services in a manner that is completely digital. So these neobanks are making use of all the innovations that we talked about in these few slides and bringing it all together in a way that makes sense for these small businesses. But this is again a completely intense topic in itself, and maybe in a later discussion, maybe sometime we can talk about neobanking in detail in itself and handle any queries around it. So overall, this is what I wanted to talk about. So I'm good from my side. Maybe we can move on to the Q&A on any specific questions you might have, and then we will wrap this up.
And